Danny Zaslavsky with Country Hill Motors in Kansas City and managing partner of VinCue. And I'm joined today with Joe Reck, and Joe's with VinCue, and he leads our performance team. So, Joe, you want to share a little history about yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon. Again, my name's Joe Reck. I'm the team lead for the performance side for VinCue. I've got over 30 years of history in the industry, anywhere from retail, wholesale, parts, service, F&I, sales management. So I feel like I've done about every position in the store and been around at least to pass my knowledge on to our dealers and assist. And my staff, the performance managers here at VinCue, same thing. They have the similar experiences that I do to assist our clients.
Yeah, so today's topic is gross behaviors. And Mike and Joe and I were laughing the other day because there are gross behaviors that increase gross, right? And there are gross behaviors that are just gross. So as we kind of delve into this subject, if you're joining us on Facebook or if you're joining us through Zoom, please, I encourage you to ask questions and we'll try to get them answered. But if you have any questions that require kind of more of a one-on-one conversation, Joe, you want to tell our folks how they can reach you or their performance manager?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the best way is, through me. My email is Joe, just Joe at dealerq.com. And feel free to give me a call, a text, 816-516-3655 is always the best way.
Look at that, sharing your cell phone. Perfect, cool, I like it. So let's get on the subject. So gross behaviors. I think we're not naive to the fact that things are changing out there. And one of the ways to shift power from big box retailers, on big online retailers, right, to us on the ground who are playing that ground game, who are working to make sure to stay relevant. Years ago was the initial conversation of digital retailing, right? So how do we eliminate friction from a consumer's buying experience? And today, that friction exists for dealers on the acquisition side, right? And so for weeks now, we've been talking about how to be innovative with vehicle acquisition, whether it be in your service drive, whether it be through email marketing, social media, whether it be through an outbound approach and going out and conquering that inventory through the third-party vendor sites like Facebook and CarGurus. And we'll touch on that a little bit, but there are gross behaviors that exist there, and there are gross behaviors that exist there. So we invited Joe here because he works with dealers across the country that are using our platform and have also come off of other platforms, right, with legacy patterns or legacy ways of doing things that I think today are being challenged. So I guess let's start there. Joe, what's some of the most common things that happen when somebody transitions over, and what patterns do you see that should need attention, right?
I think the biggest thing some of the things that we're seeing is you're building value in the vehicles and as far as descriptions, photos, pricing, inventory management. So once you've acquired the vehicles, getting them out there on the web and showing the information that we are marketing the vehicles correctly. And that's one of our biggest hurdles with some of the dealers out there, is just showing them properly how to market and the things that they can do to change and bring value to those cars.
I love it. So I'm going to share my screen here and let's jump into that very conversation because I think that's really relevant and really important. I know from experience that, the sole mission and vision of VinCue is to bring together solutions that used to live independently, like inventory management, market pricing, acquisition. These are all different logins that you'd have to go into. And today it all exists under one roof. So part of that psychology or part of that process is tracking that vehicle from the moment it's acquired, right? So for instance, when we're doing appraisals in the system and we're looking at a particular vehicle, let's look at this Jeep Wrangler. I know it because we just acquired it. And so in this case, we can start from the appraisal. And once you kind of land on an ACV, and you know that this was a street purchase, right? We're assigning where it's coming from and we can see who the appraiser is. Then we can start assigning any visible reconditioning to that vehicle so that we can start building that vehicle file, okay? And you can see it tallies up here in the end of what we think that should be. And then you have defaults, whether it be trade, wholesale, auction, and so forth. And then once that vehicle comes into inventory because it's been acquired, let's go over, and I want you to see, because what we're talking about today is an acronym we called HAV, or highest authentic value, because that's the whole goal, is to create that highest authentic value for the consumer so that they're not just shopping on price, right, Joe?
That's correct.
Yeah. So this is my store. So let's use this Audi as an example. So you can see this vehicle has 6 service records on it. We can see we're priced 3 of 8 on it. So we're not the best price. We're not the worst. Pay attention to see what my cost is, what my gross is, and my percent to market. So I've got a larger gross on this vehicle, still maintaining a low cost to market and low price to market. But when we jump into it, and we'll look at it both from the consumer side and from the dealer side, right away, we can see that reconditioning was applied to this vehicle. And so we can see how much was spent, and we can push any of this directly out to the consumer. So you can put the retail value of that versus the internal value of that. You can save that and push it directly to the consumer through the VDP across all reconditioning items. That is super, super important because it's one of the only ways you're gonna reconditioning is one of the only ways you're gonna separate this vehicle from another vehicle before we start looking at like certification warranties, or what we call DEI, dealer exclusive items, initiatives, incentives, whatever you're doing at the store. Joe, what do you see when dealers start behaving and treating their inventory in this manner versus working strictly on price and price to market, cost to market?
When they start using the tool, especially the reconditioning tool, and using this and actually sending it out to your descriptions, individuals are definitely more likely to reach out when they see that some of these things have been completed or done. New tires, new brakes. That is a big piece of the puzzle, adding that into your descriptions. That is so important far as building your descriptions and understanding that when people are out there searching for specific vehicles, the consumers types in and Googles, I'm looking for, this is Audi 2018 Audi S3, whatever it may be, with black interior that, has certain options. We want to make sure that your vehicle populates. And that's where it comes in to moving to that next step and putting these items and then going over to the description building and adding those key features and options in there so your vehicle populates when someone searches it.
Yeah. So we're talking about, and the only way I can describe it, right, is gross behavior versus gross behavior, right? So gross behavior, for those of you listening, just audio, I'm going to try to inflect so I'm talking about money versus a gross behavior that you should change. So anything that you can communicate to a consumer that increases the value of the car, reconditioning is one of those areas, is really important. And we can begin to talk about ingesting that data either through a DMS or we can do it manually through a system. And all of that is then also visible directly if you have your sales team using VinCue on their phones. We have a salesperson's view of that, so they can get basic information on the vehicle, including recon, so that they can share that with the consumer. The other thing to consider for those of you that work with Jason Rice and Lot Pop and Lot Score, this is where we start having the conversation around acquisition and where you are light or heavy in a segment, market, price range, and what your ROI is relative to your holding cost. Because for those of us with a floor plan, holding cost is a real thing. And holding cost doesn't just take into consideration the floor plan fees, right? But all the fees that are related to that parking spot that vehicle is sitting in. And so we may think we're making a bunch of profit, but after that car's been sitting for a long time, that profit gets diminished by holding costs. So those kinds of gross behaviors are important to recognize, and we believe that it begins with the appraisal and flows all the way to the sale. So speaking of appraisal, Joe, can we speak about a little bit when a dealer is appraising in our system for the first time versus coming off of another system? What are some of the differentiators in the way that we appraise that increase gross and churn relative to what they're used to?
Right. I think one of the biggest thing, of course, that as I look at our tool, definitely here in the 21st century, everything that stands out in the data that we give you a lot of data. This is true live market data. The thing that stands out with us is that we are going to rule out immediately those vehicles that do not make sense to include in your comparables. Mileage is a big thing. We'll have a vehicle that might have 30,000 miles on it. Is that something we really want to compare against something that's for sale out there that has 150,000 miles? No, probably not. Are you able to bring it in? Sure, we can if we need to, but more than likely it doesn't make sense to use that as a comparable.
Yeah, so the way we teach at our store, and this is something that I encourage you, David Long, a friend of ours, talked about. So if you have a sales tower of, call it 3 managers, give them the same vehicle and have them appraise it and see where they land is a really good exercise. When you do that across your organization, I think there's a lot to learn there. So what's inherently different here in the system is VinCue is interested in giving you the most accurate comparables, not the most comparables. So if you notice below the black line here, we start excluding certain comps, but if you want to include them and add them to your comp set, you simply click on it and it throws it up into the comp set. It's so you can see there it is. And the green ones are sold retail transactions, so we can see what they're actually leaving the internet for. But when we appraise, and this is a gross behavior, right? A good positive thing is we start with the comps because we don't want to be affecting cost to market or price to market without agreeing that the comps are correct. Now, that's on the retail side, right? You can do the same thing on the wholesale side. So on the wholesale side, if you look here in the bottom right-hand corner, you can create your own auction report by not just clicking MMR, but by also clicking OVE, Odessa, Auction Edge, whatever auctions you guys are using, and creating your own auction report by choosing 4, 5, or 10, whatever you want of the most accurate comparables. So you can see really where it lands based on grade, location, mileage, all those things. And you're not just solely depending on the algorithm to spit it out.
Danny,
go ahead.
One of my favorite parts about the tool is the comparables, because like you said, this is real live accurate data. We want to give you the most accurate data, not the most comps. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we do is that we're crawling actual dealer website, or so we're getting this information from dealer websites. Mm-hmm. So we are not getting this from third parties. So there's no third party listings in here. Where sometimes that can skew the data because it can take them up to sometimes 3, 4, 5 days to remove a vehicle that might have sold yesterday or a week ago, and it's still sitting there in your comps when it's not really accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to pause and just reset the room for a second. For those of you just joining us, we're talking about gross behaviors, okay? Things that increase gross or things that take away from gross. And so you might be making a list in your head of what positive gross or negative gross behaviors you have going on at your store currently and what you're doing that might affect it. And some of it may have nothing to do with the stuff that you see on the screen, right? Some of it might be culture. And that's not what we're talking about today, but it's something that we should all be thinking about, especially as we enter into a frictionless digital age of acquisition and sales. So on the positive gross behavior side, I want to stay with the comps for a second, right? When we're appraising, traditionally, I've been taught that we look at a couple set of numbers. One is the books. The books are relevant mainly because that is what loan value is based off of. And so is this a left-hand book, a right-hand book car? Is this going to be something that we can move quickly to a need buyer versus a want buyer? Those are a lot of the reasons why I look at books. And books also, especially today with the way the market is, you can click on any one of these and go back into book dates also, and you can see the weekly or monthly books up to 6 months in the rears to kind of see how the market is changing if you're interested, or in case you need to print one off as a step. But on the comp side too, especially like, for instance, this is a 16, so it doesn't apply as much. But if we're looking at like a 19 or a 20, the ability to go into the trim and the year and add other levels of trim or other years. So for instance, if we're looking at a 20 and we want to see comps on 21s, because we know that incentives out there exist for those cars that dealers are trying to get off the lot, so we can make sure that we're not, so we actually have a competitive vehicle. This is a way to do it. You can add other years and or trim levels to the comp set and really narrow it down so that your consumer who is looking for a deal will make sure to see it. On that point though, Joe and I had this conversation right before we got on this call. If you are purely chasing consumers through price to market and cost to market, I would strongly urge you to be careful, because you're effectively training your consumers to shop only on your clearance rack. No different than if I were to walk into a store and see a piece of merchandise that I want, knowing that if I wait a week, it'll end up on the clearance table, then guess what? I'm going to be always going to the clearance room. And that's not the way we want to treat our inventory. We want to treat it in a way that increases the value of the car. And so that's where we get into inventory management. Joe, do you have any anecdotes or examples of merchandising and how it affects a dealership's culture, gross, sales, churn, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, when we're looking at this page, immediately it catches my eye is the photos. Country Hill does a phenomenal job with not only just their overlays, but their banners, highlighting specific features or items for that particular unit. You can go to many dealership websites and look at their photos and how they're taken, where they're taken. The cars are dirty, they're disarrayed. We like to see consistency. We like to see nice, clear images. But we also like to point out those things that are highlights on those cars. Maybe, on this car, leather, or maybe it's a manual transmission, backup camera, if it's specific wheels or model, entertainment system. And when you highlight those things and you put those banners out there and those overlays, that makes your vehicle stand out. And as you can see, VinCue allows you to do that. You can see we've got an overlay. We've got banners on each of the photos. We've got the ability to move them around and add different photos that maybe highlight warranties or history about the dealership, location. That is the one thing. I'm a picture guy. I love to go out, and when I'm on a dealer's website, I look at them and I study them and say, you know what, you guys could be doing a better job. And they're like, you know what, you're right, because customers are going to come and land on that website. They're going to see those pictures, and they're going to be immediately deterred if the car is dirty or it's some weird angle that you can't even really see a good image of the car.
Yeah. So let's talk about that from a process perspective. So every dealership has slightly different process for this, all the way to big groups that have entire merchandising teams and marketing teams who are in alignment in order to, and their tracking is down to the attribution of churn. So as data hungry as you want to be here, or as loose as you want to be here with it, I want to give an example of a clean process. So from the moment you appraise a vehicle, right, we're measuring, number one, days to market. So what's your look to book on from appraisal to acquisition? What once it goes into acquisition, what's your days to market through recon and up into merchandising? And then from merchandising to sale, what's your average days on lot? And some guys and gals will measure their vehicle turn from the moment a check is written. Others will measure it based on when that vehicle goes online. So that is an important distinction, though. So when you're looking at your inventory. Secondly, we learned at Country Hill, and we're certainly not alone. I can just speak to it easily because I know our process. We have a merchandising person that touches the vehicle before it goes online. So if you look here in VinCue, we can see these different buckets. So we can see what's going on in the wholesale bucket. We can see what's been recently acquired today, how many cars are sitting in hold. Hold is service, or I call it purgatory. We need to get them out of there. And then go into NFR, not frontline ready, which is merchandising. And then it goes online. Now, you can see I don't put cars online until they're through merchandising. There are plenty of dealers out there that put vehicles online immediately with a quick picture of it, which you can do through the app. That really is a decision up to you and how much process you have relative to if a consumer calls and says, hey, I want to see that car. Are you pulling it out of service? Are you pulling it out of detail in order to show it? So once we get into it, though, if you notice, we within VinCue, gross behaviors, good behaviors, give you data that provides insights to change the behavior of the people you have in the store. So for instance, we can see this was a street purchase. We can see the gross attributed to that sale. We can then go into inventory. And in this case, we've applied a sale pending overlay to it because this vehicle just sold. And so I'll show you how that's done. But if you go to our website and search for that car, it's a one-to-one connection. So let's just put an Audi, and there it is. And you can see that vehicle already has a sale pending tag on it. So it alerts and creates urgency and says, hey, this one's sold. And then also, if you notice, the notes from the team isn't just comments, but it's indented. So you can actually read it. And I know that sounds novice, but it's actually a really important piece of the VDP, so that you're not just reading a glob of information, but you're reading real notes from the team, including reconditioning, including in some cases a note from the previous owner that we capture when we buy directly from the public. And so when we go into this sale banner tab, I can choose the overlay that we want in order to adjust whether it's sale pending, sold fast, new arrival, whatever that is. Yeah, because on our site, if you notice, you have the ability to reserve this vehicle and begin the digital acquisition route. And so it's important that if you tag a car and say, you know what, I'm going to give a deposit on it, then we can put a sale pending sign on it, so that consumer can show all their friends, hey, see that one? that one's mine. I'm going to have that car soon. And it creates that urgency and excitement. Part of that positive gross behavior. Joe, you have anything to add to that, sir?
No, right on the money. I love it.
Good stuff. So as we move across the line here on gross behaviors, when you start thinking about the DEI, and DEI traditionally in business stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is so important. But I think that same mentality applies to inventory, because dealers have a diverse inventory, especially today with franchises going outside of their limits and buying inventory that belongs on their sites. That's traditionally, that they may not be buying as many Fords if they're a Toyota store and so forth. But that equity is all the things that make that vehicle unique. So recon we talked about, but certification and applying a value to that certification, warranties and applying value to that warranty, where you bought it and how you bought it is equity. Did that vehicle come locally? Was it a trade? Was it somebody who owned it and you purchased it from them up the street? Auctions traditionally have a negative connotation to consumers. And so highlighting the fact that it wasn't an auction buy is important. And in any campaigns or incentives that you guys are doing, tying that to either the overlays here, and then also tying them to the comments. And be aware how this syndicates, right? Some of this syndicates to your website that gives the consumer way more information about the equity that you as a dealer provide, but then you lose some of that when it goes out to third parties, right? Auto traders of the world, car gurus of the world, because the only place you really have to share that equity is on the overlays and on the Y buys. So these are the Y buys right here, right? You can add these Y buys right here in the system, either mobilely or through a desktop, and you can do it while you're out on the lot working and gathering this data that you think is going to share that equity with the consumer. Joe, what are your thoughts, sir?
My thoughts are, I go back to description building. I'd love you to share your screen real quick again, and you're highlighting the fact as like one owner and those key. So if you could click your description button to the left there, and then go up to features and options at the top center. Go over to the left. There you go. And then to your, go up one more space to your right. There's a features and option tab. Hit features. So you can see here, we've done some presets for your store. You can do as many as you want, but just some quick ads, one owner, prior rental, non-smoker, local trade. Those are those things that you were talking about to highlight in your description. So, if a consumer is searching for a vehicle, looking for a non-smoker, one owner, new tires, and they search for an Audi S3 with that, yours is going to populate if you put that in your description. Close out of that and go up to, click your Audi again. The European cars are a great example. We have an engineering package in our description building, and it gives the ability, click options. There you go. And it shows you, especially with all those different packages that some of these manufacturers have. I have a lot of European experience with Audi and BMW over the years. And between S packages, RS packages on Audi, M packages, M Sport on BMWs, and even the Japanese stuff, what we are able to give you is all these different packages that were available with those vehicles, and we're able to give you the original MSRP. Now, we're not going to post the MSRP out there, but we can give an added value and say, this package was initially $2,600 when they built this car. I love using that option when we're building descriptions.
Yeah, and if you could tell, we have original window stickers, and a lot of that is pulled directly from that. So you can see here's a 2016 Buick, and here's all the original options, features, and the original price. And in some cases, we think it's even valuable to go in here and highlight all of this and pull it into the description and make any adjustments needed so that it's really easily readable. But there's a lot of different ways to provide that highest authentic value to the consumer and also create genuinely good SEO and SEM that will drive consumers back to your VDPs instead of just spending money on your brand name. So we're going to do one last reset. We've got about 5 to 10 minutes left before we're going to finish up here. But today's conversation is with Joe Reck, who is head of our performance managers at VinCue, and we're talking about gross behaviors. So things that increase gross and things that lower gross. And so far we've talked about appraising in the way that you do appraisals, right? Because that appraisal should follow the into inventory and then from inventory through sales, and all that rich data in between kind of follows along with it. And then we also talked about building solid descriptions. And for those of you on Facebook, if you have a question, I'm watching the comments here. So if you do have a question, please chime in, and we're happy to speak to that. And then the other is that dealer exclusive items or initiatives or incentives, anything that you're doing that you want to communicate to the consumer so that we're not just chasing price. The last thing I want to talk about from a gross behavior is the idea of VIN-specific targeted advertising. Because sometimes when we are appraising a vehicle, we always know, whether it be through market data, how long this vehicle traditionally lives online, or through retail sales transaction data to know what the average price drop of a vehicle is like this, or what the average retail sales of a vehicle is like this. In order to cut that days on market, we can either be price competitive, right? Or you can also attract buyers from social media. And recently did that with a couple unique cars we had, Plymouth Prowler and other. But I want you to see it organically when we look at it from a total spend. So here's October for Country Hill Motors. And if we just sort by our sold, what this is doing is, so we have inventory that we know needs additional eyeballs. And so we're effectively buying those eyeballs in order to sell the car. So for example, here's a 2008 Ford Ranger, older vehicle, not that many searches on a car like this, but we do know that there are consumers looking for deals like this through social media. So this vehicle got a total of 410 VDP views, of which nearly 300 of them were brought to you by VinCue. And that cost $54, and that car is gone and sold. And so instead of lowering that price, we can see that attribution here. And then we can also jump into the vehicle and see the leads attributed to that. So it's a very powerful way when you start thinking about either targeting by specific VINs, or if you're going to be doing campaigns such as SUVs or trucks or cars under a certain price range, or sports vehicles or luxury vehicles, and working initiatives to move inventory and spending. You can see relatively very little dollar amounts per vehicle in order to move that car.
Yeah, that's definitely a gross behavior, right? As I look at some of our stores that are using Boost, what happens is they have these gross behaviors of just watching the cars, really not getting any traffic at all, and they just keep dropping and dropping their prices. Instead, they could be monitoring their VDP views. Actually, you can set that up inside VinCue to see how many views that they're getting, and maybe the traffic count is low. Like you said, that Ranger is not going to get a lot of views. So you need to market it a little bit, and we can do some VinSpecific marketing, get it out there, and spend $60, $100 to get it out there and it sell. It's a simple, easy method of doing it instead of just keep on dropping your pricing.
So here it is on back to that Audi, just since we're using the same vehicle file as an example. Here's the VDP views, and here's the leads attributed to it. And here they are. Here's all the consumers that we got to inquire about that vehicle. And what's interesting here is, and I'm going to give a shout out to our friend Jason Rice at LotScore. He has a system in place called Switch, which I think is pretty brilliant. So the idea of Switch is, on this particular car, we've had 15 opportunities. Well, only one of them bought the car. So that's 14 opportunities here that are still looking for the car. And so that idea is Switch. So if Kurt or Jason or Howard or any of these people are still in the market for a vehicle, whether it be one like this or this one, we have the opportunity to switch them to a different vehicle. And the question is, what are you doing with those switch opportunities? How are you tracking them? How are you reaching out to them? What's that process? Because it's easy to tell your sales team, hey, pay attention to your switch leads. But actually creating those leads in front of them, right? We respond to what's in front of us. Though that is a sustainable way to scale switch opportunities and to increase the amount of conversions you get versus just speaking to it, if that makes sense. Okay, well, 45 minutes goes really, really fast. Joe, any kind of closing thoughts for anybody listening on gross behaviors, either negative or positive?
Just that my team is here and willing and ready to help out to get rid of those gross behaviors and add more gross to the dealership. So, yeah.
And then how do they get a hold of you if they don't know how?
Best way to reach out is here's my direct line, 816-516-3655. And then you can always reach me via email, joe@dealerq.com. Cool.
And I'm Danny at dealerq.com. If you go to VinCue.com, actually, I want to share this one last thing with everybody. If we're trying to put very good content out there so that you can continue to learn, whether it be on the acquisition side, but you can go to the VinCue Accelerate page right on our home screen. And if you haven't join, but then you can also see past shows that we've done, whether it be how to compel private sellers to sell to you, day in the life of a BBC agent. But we're posting these up here as a library so that you can go back and see them, learn from them, and then continue to level up your team. So with that, thank you everybody who joined today, and we look forward to connecting next week.